And it's time to start this thing. Let's bring up the first map. Today's topic is one that I think experienced mappers will be pretty generally familiar with, but they may not have thought through all the nuance, and newer mappers may not have a good sense of how to deal with these things when they come up. It's something that I think a lot of us have experienced. This will continue to be an issue as the project gets older and older. It wasn't really a big deal back in 2009, 2010 when we were new, we were building out, we were fixing Tiger in the US. But over time it becomes a bigger issue. And the issue is basically that some of the resources we depend upon become out of date. And so this presentation is going to actually be a general discussion, advice on how to respond when you see things, data that doesn't align and you need to decide what to do about it. And your response is going to be different if you're a local mapper on the ground and if you are somebody doing remote mapping. In particular, there are a lot of remote mappers for hire working for various corporations now, and I think that they have gotten better, but in the early period of paid remote mapping, I would see things come up a lot where they were using out-of-date references or erroneous references in places they'd never been. So we really need to talk about all this stuff. So what is this we're looking at here? This is OpenStreetMap current, and we see here this is US 4 or Troy Road, and this is Interstate 90. Interstate 90 was built through here in the early 1970s. Troy Road has been here and has been US 4 for a very long time. But the roundabouts you see here are actually pretty new because roundabouts are the new big thing in upstate New York. The New York DOT is busy putting roundabouts up at really intersections where they think that the accident rates are too high because of the perception that roundabouts reduce accident rates, and they have stats that say this is true, so I'm not going to argue that they're wrong. Probably is true. The only challenge with it is that a lot of upstate New York drivers are really bad at roundabouts, and it can take a while for them to get used to them. Some of them will never be really good at roundabouts, but life is tough. So this roundabout to the north, been there for a few years now. This roundabout here is actually been built over the past couple of months, and I am a local mapper on the ground, and so I basically dealt with it using the standard methods and practices that you use under these circumstances. We're going to come over here to JOSM, and we're going to look at it. Now I've zoomed in here. And what we can see is that this aerial image, which is Mapbox Satellite, shows an old T-junction where there was a yield sign on this ramp, there was a stop sign here, and there was no control on US 4 north-south. And the DOT noted that there was a pretty high incident rate here, and decided it was a good candidate for a small roundabout to reduce the accident rate. So I obviously can't depend on aerial imagery for fixing this. What I can do, what I did, is I basically fired up a track logger on my Android tablet, and just for informational purposes, I typically use OSM Tracker for Android, I could have used OSM and which will take good GPS tracks, and there are others out there, and I'm not going to tell you that any particular one is better than the other. So I've loaded that in JOSM. Turn that back on. Okay, this is the circle to the north. And you see over the course of the past few weeks, I basically steadily took GPS tracks okay, so that's 1840. I'm looking at the last digits on the track. The way of keeping track of which ones I've just uploaded and which ones I haven't. We'll open a couple of more so we can get the whole picture. The other thing is that the north-south legs through the traffic circle, so there's 1420. The north-south legs through the traffic circle are 2-lane, and the links to the actual I-90 westbound ramps, well, we're looking for the one after 1420. The links east and west to the westbound ramp are single lane, and as the ramps opened, I made sure to travel both lanes through, straight through without changing lanes, so that I had tracks in both lanes. The GPS is really pretty accurate. What I don't yet have is something I am looking for, which is tracks I know I have. This one ended in 39 of the actual ramp, because the ramp got rerouted. So I'm just going to keep on loading. The thing to keep in mind also is that when you get these significant route changes, now we're looking for the one after 2529. With these significant rerouting changes, the other thing that happens is that previously loaded GPS tracks in the OSM library now tend to have problems with being out of date. So that's a thing to watch out for too. You can't just depend on the density of the cloud anymore at that point, because you may be looking at things from the old. Okay, there is a track. Yeah, I keep on clicking the wrong download button. That's because of my ineptitude. So that's probably enough tracks to look at here. So let's zoom back in on the relevant section. So now you see you've got I've also got tracks taking the ramp, but those are older. That's been stable for a while. I'm not going to go to the trouble. But now you can see that we've got a lot of tracks, older tracks, because the lanes were released for access to the public gradually over time. New York State rebuilt this intersection slowly in place while trying to keep it as open as possible. And there are more tracks, and I'm pretty comfortable that I've got all of these things in the right place based on the aggregate of the tracks I've taken. So really the main point here is that get yourself plenty of GPS tracks, and then you'll have a basis. Now, a thing I haven't done yet that I'm going to need to do is upload a lot of these tracks to OpenStreetMap so that they appear in the point cloud, because otherwise the people might download the raw GPS data because, you know, we've got all of these old points, and there are a lot of them are basically showing the old route through the intersection, and we need to basically load a bunch of new data here. So the other things that you do while this was under construction, for the things that were closed, you use the highway equal construction, construction equals, and the likely road type. And that's for things that are closed. If things are open, you use construction equal minor. And I am always in the habit of including some kind of a node or readme. Right now I'm using readme in caps, which works well with JOSM because it gets sorted to the top. But the truth is that I just clicked on the wrong thing. So let's take a copy of that text, leave that tag, and add description, which will be more likely to be spotted by an ID user. It basically says imagery out of date, do not conform to imagery, reconstructed. So we're trying to tell people doing armchair or flyover remote mapping that deciding to put this back to match the imagery is not cool, that, you know, some mapper has put an effort into keeping this up to date. Because it's happened to me more than once. Oh, I hit cancel ACK. That, you know, I have gone to the trouble to fix something up to match major changes, and then somebody has kind of flown in and said, oh, that doesn't match the imagery, I'll fix it. And the other thing I did while the construction was in progress was I also put a land use polygon around it, land use equal construction, and that renders in the main editor, and it's fairly obvious, and it got the job done. Now if you're an armchair mapper, a paid remote mapper, whatever term you want to use, the correct response should always be, when you see something that's got a discrepancy like this, is not to jump on the fix, ever. The correct response, yeah, I wanted to click on this. The correct response is going to be to look at the history to see how recent these things have been. Recently these things have been edited, what kind of source they're using in their change set. Are there any readmes or descriptions or notes tagged onto it? Basically, you need to figure out if there is an active local mapper who has recently made these changes. And if you see that, you can either say, okay, hands off, this is probably already in good hands, or if you feel strongly about it, you know, reach out to them, you know, send a message in the system or make a comment on the change set, you know, whatever you think you need to do. But don't just say, this is wrong, I gotta fix it and put it back, because you are probably in error. And let's go find an example that I ran into a while back now. So, yeah, we are looking at area that's actually only a couple miles from where I live. And this was something that was done by a remote mapper working for one of the okay, a lot of GPS points through there. I took a lot of tracks and uploaded them back in the day. Let's put that in background and head over to what I downloaded. We'll just use download again, but we'll turn off raw GPS data. Oh, come on, it doesn't reposition anymore. Not quite how I meant to do this, but it'll work. So we're zooming on the lovely and talented territory of West Sand Lake. Well, actually, Sand Lake, because we're in the town, not the village. Well, it's not even a village, it's considered a hamlet. And this road right here, which is a pain to select because it's got a border right on top of it, this is Thai Road. And while we're here, well, maybe we won't. I never did delete those tiger tags, and I don't tend to delete tiger tags unless I'm well positioned, unless I can bundle it in another edit. So yeah, I may not be able to show you kind of what I intended, but there are a lot of driveways along here. And actually, yeah, the driveway I was looking for has been deleted. But, oh, I guess I can't show you what I wanted to show you. But there is a driveway which the Census Bureau had, in some early version of Tiger, mislabeled Thai Road, and they had never corrected it. So the result was that OpenStreetMap imported Tiger in 2007, and we got 2 Thai roads. And as a mapper cleaning up the area around my home, I spotted the problem and I deleted Thai Road from the driveway because, you know, it wasn't Thai Road. I may even have deleted the driveway because it was basically short and constituted kind of noise and couldn't be ground surveyed because it was private. Couple reasons why you might delete a driveway like that if you can't really verify it properly. And a couple years later, a remote mapper just came back in and he was re-adding stuff off of Tiger layers, and it's like, dude, didn't you check the history of the driveway? I mean, didn't you check any of the local history? But then some advice I want to give you if you're an experienced mapper who has decided to reach out, because you should always reach out. Edit wars are bad, and one of the ways that you try and stay out of edit wars is actually by reaching out to people and basically saying, you know, why did you do this? Why did you think this was the correct thing to do? Critically, don't show anger or emotion. You know, be calm. Treat it as a teaching moment. And, you know, if you start out with hostility, you will almost never actually succeed in teaching. So, you know, try and accomplish something useful. Don't pitch a fit. And in fact, I don't know if the mapper in question really learned the lesson, but he responded calmly to my calm message and said, noted. And since I'm not really a stalker, I did not pay attention to his future edits. I do not know how that progressed, but I hope he learned a lesson from it. So the final thing I'm going to cover here is just to point out that there is an OpenHistoricalMap option when these things happen. And when I saw this reconfiguration, I went over to OpenHistoricalMap, and so that wasn't quite the move I wanted to make, but we've zoomed in here a bit. And this is actually the same area, but what I've actually done here is I have, first of all, reproduced, I'll use Maxar here, all of the imagery in this area is about the same time. So this has the modern traffic circle, and I need to do a little work here, but this has a route. This is actually a slightly older version of Route 4, and I still have work to do here, because what I have actually done in the spirit of OHM reflecting on the past is that this stuff all has a start date, I believe 1973, 1972, because that's when I-90 was built through here. And going into older historical imagery, I happen to have 1952 Capital District stuff. So we can also see the road routing before the construction of I-90. And so this and there's some offset issues here, which is why this doesn't quite line up. I need to improve the quality of the mosaic. So yeah, we can see roads that, well, for example, this road, which is a historic routing of Troy Road in US 4, was truncated when I-90 was built because it was going to cross the westbound ramps, so they just cut it off. And likewise, this is a mystery that I encountered years ago that I now finally understand. When I first came to the area, which is a couple years after I-90, this road, which extends off in the distance to this day, you can see the offset problems there. I've still got tweaking to do on this alignment. But yeah, this was labeled Upper Mannix Road, and there was a section on the other side labeled Lower Mannix Road. Now, since then, the road sign for Lower Mannix Road has been eliminated, and the road sign for Upper Mannix Road now just says Mannix Road. So let's turn 1952 back on. Oh, wait a minute, let's turn it off. You can see that actually this section of Lower Mannix Road that I've mapped is missing today. And it's missing today because I-90 was built. So we go back to 1952 imagery. And you know what? Much longer Lower Mannix Road. And it is wandering across until it links up with this highway, which is now a county route. 3rd Avenue extension used to be a state route. New York state routes thinned out a lot. There's a lot of data on them in Wikipedia, and I'm gradually factoring that information about highway reroutings into OHM. Again, offset problems, so I've mapped this using modern imagery until I get this fixed up. But we can see that there is a rerouting here, that this is now connected up here, and it's now named Temple Lane, and they're in the process of rebuilding Temple Lane, which used to be Lower Mannix Road. So that's an example of the sort of thing you get mining into historical resources. So if you're straddling OpenStreetMap and OpenHistoricalMap, these things can be opportunities. My one caution is just don't assume that you can copy things over to OHM because of licensing constraints. You know, if you can get permission from the original authors, and these ramps probably haven't had a lot of authors, but I just basically, since there is good imagery data, I didn't bother to copy. I just remapped it off of Imagery. Your mileage may vary, but ODBL right now, you shouldn't be copying ODBL data over unless you get explicit permission from the creators. And that's all I'll say there. So anyway, it's a relatively short one today, but I hope this is proven informative to all of you. And I have not been paying any attention to my Twitch commentary stream, so I'm going to go over and take a look at it now before I cut this off. And I see that I didn't bother to change the stream title, so oops. I knew I should do that and I didn't. Life is tough. So if you want to talk about this, hit me in Slack, hit me in Discord, hit me in Facebook, message me directly in Twitch, and we'll be back on the bicycle in the near future. See you in the next one.